Welcome to Soul Stories, your home for heart-touching tales of love, hope, and second chances. If you believe in the power of kindness and the magic of unexpected connections, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing family. Now let's begin today's story. The air inside the trailer reeked of stale coffee and cheap lavender air freshener. Ava sat at the wobbly kitchen table, both hands cradling her 5-month pregnant belly, eyes fixed on the pile of overdue bills Lorraine had just thrown in front of her. The flickering fluorescent light overhead cast uneven shadows on the peeling linoleum floor. Outside, cicadas chirped in rhythm with the distant rumble of pickup trucks rolling down the dusty road of Willow Creek, a small town in Ohio where dreams slowly withered away. "See this, Ava?" Lorraine's voice was sharp as a blade, her manicured nails tapping out a rhythm on the table. She was a gaunt woman pushing 50, with stiffly teased blonde hair and lipstick red as blood beneath the fluorescent light. "Electricity, water, your daddy's hospital bills. You think I print money?" Ava's throat tightened. Her father, Tom, had passed away 3 months ago. Pancreatic cancer, swift and cruel. He'd been the only steady thing in her life, the one who taught her how to change a tire and laugh through tears. Now all that was left was this trailer, a mountain of debt, and Lorraine, the woman who married Tom 2 years ago and never let Ava forget she wasn't her real daughter. "I'm trying, Lorraine," Ava said softly, barely above a whisper. "I have shifts at the diner and—" "Trying?" Lorraine scoffed, tossing a credit card statement onto the pile. "Your potato frying tips won't cut it. And don't even get me started on that thing in your belly. What the hell were you thinking, letting that useless Caleb knock you up?" Ava's cheeks burned. Caleb, her high school boyfriend, had vanished the moment she showed him the positive pregnancy test. She'd been naive, believing he'd stick around. Now at 22, she was alone, and her dreams of community college and becoming a nurse were buried under the crushing weight of reality. Lorraine leaned in, eyes glinting, with something Ava couldn't quite place. Maybe calculation. "Lucky for you, I found a solution. A loan to wipe this all clean, but it needs your signature." Ava frowned, her hand instinctively resting on her belly as the baby gave a light kick. "A loan? But I don't have any credit. Who would lend to me?" "Don't worry," Lorraine said, pushing a brown folder across the table. "This is a special arrangement, a private lender. They just need a few signatures, some standard paperwork, a power of attorney form, a few financial transfer documents. You sign, we get the money, and these bills disappear. You want a safe place for your baby, don't you?" Ava's stomach twisted. Lorraine's voice had that off tone again, like the time she borrowed grocery money and came back with a new purse. But what choice did Ava have? The electricity had been cut off twice last month, and the hospital kept sending collection notices from her dad's final days. She couldn't lose this place. Not when it was all she had left of him. "What kind of documents?" Ava asked, reaching for the folder. Lorraine snatched it back, smiling tightly. "You don't need to read every word. It's all legal. My friend at the notary office checked it. Just sign where I marked." She flipped it open, revealing a stack of papers, each flagged with bright yellow tabs reading, "Sign here." The first page was titled Power of Attorney, but the content was dense and filled with legal jargon Ava couldn't make sense of. "I'm not sure, Lorraine. Shouldn't a lawyer look at this?" Lorraine scoffed. "A lawyer? With what money, Ava? Your diner tips." She softened her tone, leaning in closer. "Look, I'm trying to help you. Your dad would want me to take care of you. This is how I'm doing that." Ava's eyes burned. She wanted to believe Lorraine, wanted to believe someone, anyone, had her back. But her father's voice echoed in her head. "Always read the fine print, sweetheart," making her hesitate. Still, the bills loomed large, and the baby kicked again, a reminder of the future she had to protect. "All right," Ava whispered, taking the pen Lorraine handed her. Her hand trembled as she signed, her signature shaky on the lines. Lorraine's smile widened, and she snapped the folder shut. "Good girl," Lorraine said, standing up. "I'll file this tomorrow. You'll see. Everything's going to be fine." 2 days later, Ava stood inside the Willow Creek Town Hall, a squat brick building with flickering lights and a faint musty smell. She wore her only clean dress, a faded blue sundress that fit snugly over her baby bump. Lorraine had dragged her here, claiming it was to finalize the loan. But as they waited in a cramped office, Ava's unease grew. The notary, a bored-looking woman with a nameplate reading Doris, kept glancing at Lorraine with a strange, familiar smirk. "What exactly are we doing here?" Ava asked, shifting on the hard plastic chair. Lorraine didn't look up from her phone. "Just wrapping things up. Don't make a scene." Before Ava could press further, the door opened and Doris returned, this time with a man in tow. He was tall, early 30s maybe, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and patchy stubble on his jaw. His clothes, faded flannel and worn jeans, looked like they belonged to better days, but his eyes were sharp, steel gray, like they could see through walls. He had a weathered backpack slung over one shoulder. "This is Leo," Doris said curtly. "The other party to the agreement." Ava blinked. "Other party? To what?" Lorraine shot her a warning look. "Don't start, Ava. It's part of the arrangement." Doris handed Leo a clipboard with a form. He scanned it quickly, unreadable, then signed with practiced ease. Ava caught a glimpse of the title, Civil Marriage Authorization. Her heart stuttered. "Marriage," she blurted, her voice loud in the tiny room. "What is this?" Lorraine grabbed her hand, her nails digging into Ava's skin. "Keep your voice down," she hissed. "It's just paperwork, Ava, a formality to secure the loan. Leo here is taking on the debt. You should thank him." Ava's head spun. She looked at Leo, who met her eyes for a brief moment before turning away. His silence made her nervous. Why would a stranger, a man who looked like he slept under a bridge, agree to this? And why hadn't Lorraine mentioned marriage? "I didn't agree to this," Ava said, her voice shaking. "You said it was a loan." "It is a loan," Lorraine snapped. "The lender needs a guarantor. Leo signs as your husband to transfer the debt legally. This isn't a real marriage, it's a contract. You won't even have to see him again." Ava's fist clenched. She wanted to run, to rip up the papers, but the weight of her reality pinned her down. The bills, the baby, the trailer. She had nowhere else to go. And Lorraine's grip on her hand felt like a warning. Doris cleared her throat. "We need your signature, Miss Harper, to authorize the marriage." Ava's eyes darted to Leo. He stood still, face unreadable. For a second, she thought she saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe pity. But he said nothing. With trembling fingers, Ava took the pen. Her signature felt like a betrayal, a surrender to a life she hadn't chosen. As she signed, Lorraine's triumphant smile returned. "Congratulations," Doris said flatly, stamping the form. "You're officially married." Ava's stomach churned. Married to a stranger. Over a debt she didn't fully understand. She looked at Leo, searching for answers, but he had already turned away, hoisting his backpack. As Lorraine ushered her out of the office, Ava placed her hand on her belly, where the baby kicked again. She didn't know who Leo was or why he'd agreed to this, but one thing was clear. Her life had just changed forever. Willow Creek Town Hall felt like a cage, its beige walls closing in, suffocating, the word married sitting on Ava's chest like a stone. Behind the counter, the notary Doris flipped through documents, each stamp of her seal hitting like a gavel. Lorraine was already halfway to the door, her heels clacking across the tile floor, but Ava's eyes were locked on Leo, the stranger who was now her husband. He stood near the exit, an old backpack slung over one shoulder, his wrinkled flannel shirt clean but tired looking. His steel gray eyes flicked to her for a brief moment, cold and unreadable, then looked away, his jaw clenched. He hadn't said a single word since signing the marriage authorization form, not even a greeting. Ava's stomach churned. Who was this man, and why had he agreed to this farce? "Ava, let's go!" Lorraine snapped, holding the door open. "You're wasting time." Ava's feet moved on autopilot, her sundress brushing her thighs as she followed Lorraine into the late afternoon heat. Leo trailed behind, the sound of his boots scraping against the pavement. The parking lot smelled of tar and gasoline, with the whine of a lawnmower humming from a nearby yard. Ava glanced at Leo, hoping for a sign, a word, a nod, anything. But he stared at the ground, hands in his pockets. "Where's he going?" Ava asked quietly as they neared Lorraine's battered old sedan. Lorraine rolled her eyes. With you, obviously. He's your husband now. She stressed the word husband with a mocking tone, as if it were a punchline Ava was too slow to catch. You two are staying in the rental on Sycamore Street. I arranged everything. Ava's heart dropped. Sycamore Street was the rundown stretch near the old church, where houses sagged under the weight of time. She'd thought Leo would disappear after signing the papers, that this marriage would stay on paper. But living with him, a stranger who looked like he'd just wandered out of a soup kitchen? Wait, Ava said, halting. You never said anything about living together. Lorraine sighed, tossing her purse into the car. What did you think, Ava? That he'd signed to take on your debt and just vanish? The lender needs this to look real. You two stay together until the debt's cleared. It's not like you have to play house. Ava placed a hand on her belly where the baby squirmed. She wanted to argue, demand answers, but the image of those unpaid bills and Lorraine's nails digging into her arm kept her silent. She looked at Leo again. He leaned against a lamppost, staring at the horizon like none of this concerned him. Get in, Lorraine said, sliding into the driver's seat. Leo knows the way. The house on Sycamore was even worse than Ava had imagined. The paint peeled in long strips, the porch stairs groaned ominously, and the front yard was overgrown with scraggly weeds. Dust coated the frosted window panes, and a crooked "For Rent" sign stood half buried in the grass. Lorraine pulled up without cutting the engine. This is your place, she said, handing Ava a set of keys. Don't break anything. I paid the first month's rent. Ava clutched the keys, cold and metallic, in her hand. What about you? I'm staying at the main house, Lorraine replied, meaning her trailer. You think I'm going to cram in with you two? She glanced at Leo, who stood a few feet away, arms crossed. Ava swallowed. But I don't know anything about him. Then ask, Lorraine said with a shrug. He signed the papers, took the debt. That's all you need to know. She stepped on the gas, leaving a cloud of dust as the sedan peeled away. Ava stood there, on the edge of an empty street, feeling like the ground beneath her was falling away. She turned to Leo, who was staring at the house with a blank expression. The sunset cast an amber glow on his hair, but his eyes remained cold, like everything around him was just scenery. Hi, Ava said, her voice trembling. I'm Ava. Leo nodded, just once, without a word. He walked up the creaking steps and unlocked the front door with his own key. He already had one, she realized with a jolt. He disappeared inside, leaving the door open behind him. Ava took a deep breath, her hand rubbing her belly for comfort. We'll be okay, she whispered to the baby, though even she didn't believe it. She stepped inside, the wooden floor groaning beneath her. The house was dark and musty, filled with the scent of damp wood and stale air. The living room was tiny, with a worn-out sofa and a scratched-up coffee table. A single ceiling bulb flickered weakly overhead, casting a dim yellow glow. Leo stood in the kitchen, testing the faucet. He turned it on, listened to it sputter, then shut it off again, still silent. Ava lingered in the doorway, unsure. Have you lived here long? She asked, trying to break the silence. He paused, back still to her. No, he said, his voice low and rough, like it hadn't been used in a long time. Just one word, but it landed solidly, discouraging further questions. Ava bit her lip. So why'd you agree to this? I mean, the contract. You don't even know me and still... Leo turned, locking eyes with her. That look stopped her cold. Not angry, but as if he were assessing her, weighing something. I have my reasons, he said, then turned away, grabbing his backpack and heading for the hallway. That room's yours. She watched him disappear into a bedroom, the door clicking shut behind him. Her heart pounded. Reasons. What kind of reasons made a man like him, silent, mysterious, seemingly out of place, walk into something like this? She didn't know, but the way he had looked at her, as if he saw something she didn't, gave her chills. Ava dragged her small suitcase into the remaining bedroom. It was bare, just a sagging mattress, a thin blanket, and a crooked wardrobe. She sat on the edge of the bed, dust rising into the air. Outside, the chirping of insects filled the silence, and somewhere in the house she heard Leo moving. A footstep, a creaky door. She held her belly, feeling the baby's heartbeat. "It's only temporary," she said, unsure if she meant it for the baby or herself. But as moonlight spilled through the cracked window and lit the worn floor, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that this house and the man in the room next door were hiding something far bigger than she could imagine. Every morning, sunlight filtered through the cracked window of the Sycamore Street house, scattering patchy beams across the scarred wooden floor. Ava woke on the old bed, the mattress creaking under the weight of her 6-month belly. Birds chirped outside, their song blending with the wind slipping through the walls. But inside, the silence was heavy, a constant, unwelcome companion. Leo had already left before she woke, just like every day since that bizarre wedding signing a week ago. The house Lorraine had rented on the cheap was a mess. Water stains marred the walls, the kitchen faucet dripped rust, and the old heater in the living room did little more than spit out dusty air. Ava tried to adjust to the place, but every corner reminded her of how fragile everything was. A mother-to-be unprepared, a fake marriage, and a husband who barely said more than 3 words. Leo was a ghost. He left early, returned after dark, his boots dusty and flannel sleeves rolled up. Ava assumed he did manual labor somewhere, probably the construction site near the church where the sound of excavators echoed all day. She'd once asked him what he did, only to get a curt nod and a single word. Odd jobs. Then he disappeared into his room. The door stayed shut, a silent warning. Do not enter. But there were strange things. One morning, Ava woke with an aching back, a lovely pregnancy perk. She dragged herself into the kitchen, planning to heat water, only to find a kettle already warm on the stove, steam still rising. Next to it sat a bottle of pregnancy-safe pain relievers, still sealed. She looked around, but Leo had long gone. On another day, she accidentally shattered her late father's favorite mug, a chipped ceramic one that read, "Best Dad in Ohio," and cried herself to sleep, thinking it was gone forever. The next morning, she found it sitting on the kitchen table, carefully glued back together with superglue. No note. No word from Leo. Those gestures confused her. He didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't hold her gaze for more than a second. But he noticed her. He saw her in a way no one had since her father died. It was both comforting and unsettling. Today, Ava sat on the worn couch in the living room, thumbing through one of her father's old notebooks, filled with simple recipes, like the stew she'd once loved. She wanted to cook something, just to feel normal for a moment, but the fridge was nearly empty. Just a few eggs and an expired cup of yogurt. Her diner tips couldn't stretch through the week, and Lorraine had stopped sending money after setting up the house. She heard the front door creak open, then Leo's familiar footsteps. He entered, bringing the scent of fresh-cut wood and sweat. His old backpack thudded to the floor. He glanced her way, those cold gray eyes unreadable, then went straight into the kitchen. "Hey," Ava said hesitantly. She'd learned Leo rarely responded, but still tried, as if his silence were some kind of test she had to pass. He nodded, didn't look back, and opened the fridge. Ava watched him frown at the emptiness inside. He took the only bottle of water, drank a swig, then set it back down. "I was going to the store," Ava lied just to fill the silence. Truth was, she had no money, and the idea of asking Leo, her husband on paper, was too humiliating. Leo said nothing. He pulled a brown paper bag from his backpack, placed it on the counter, and retreated to his room. The door closed behind him, as always. Ava stared at the bag, heart racing. She rose slowly, her pregnant belly making movement a little awkward, and peeked inside. A fresh loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, a few apples, a box of pasta. Not much, but enough to keep her from going hungry for a few days. No note, no explanation. Just food, a silent offering. She sat down, hands trembling as she opened the peanut butter. The familiar scent stung her eyes. Her dad used to make peanut butter sandwiches when she was upset. Now a stranger, the man she called husband, was doing the same, without even knowing. "Where did you get this stuff?" she called toward Leo's room, knowing he wouldn't answer. As expected, silence. Only the wind outside and the pounding of her own heart. That evening, Ava boiled pasta with what little salt and olive oil they had left. She made a small plate for Leo, and left it on the kitchen table with a scrap of paper that read, "Thank you." She wasn't sure he'd eat it, but she needed to do something, no matter how small. While she was washing dishes, back aching again, she heard footsteps behind her. Leo stood at the kitchen doorway, holding the empty plate. He set it in the sink beside her, and for a moment, their shoulders brushed. Ava flinched slightly, but he didn't apologize. Instead, he looked at her, this time longer, as if searching for something. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough and low, as if speaking was an effort. Ava blinked, surprised. It was the longest sentence he'd ever spoken to her. "Yeah, just back pain. Pregnancy stuff." He nodded, his eyes drifting to her belly, then back to her face. "Rest," he said, then turned and walked away, leaving her with the dishes and a strange feeling she couldn't quite name. That night, as Ava lay in bed listening to the hum of insects outside the cracked window, she thought about Leo. He wasn't the husband she'd ever imagined. No one dreamed of a marriage born from debt and lies. But his small gestures, warm water, medicine, food, were like scattered pieces of a puzzle she couldn't yet solve. Who was he? And why was he here, in this broken-down house with her? She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby's tiny heartbeat. "I don't know how this will end," she whispered, "but I'm going to try." And in the quiet of the dark, she wondered if Leo, the silent husband, was trying too, in his own quiet way. June's sun scorched Willow Creek, turning Sycamore Street into a dusty furnace. Ava trudged home after her 4-hour shift at the diner, her swollen feet throbbing under the strain of her 6.5-month belly. Her worn cloth bag was nearly empty, holding only a few crumpled dollar bills and tips, not enough for a bottle of water, let alone dinner. Hunger gnawed at her like an unwelcome companion, but she'd grown used to skipping meals to save for worse days. The rental house came into view, its patchy roof tiles shimmering under the blistering sun. Ava paused, gripping the broken fence for balance. Her head spun, vision blurring, bright spots dancing in her eyes. She tried to take another step, but her knees buckled and the world fell away. When Ava came to, she was on her back, pale blue sky sliding overhead. No, she was moving. Someone was carrying her. Familiar sense of cut wood and sweat filled her senses. "Leo," she whispered, voice thin. "Don't talk," he replied, low and clipped, but with an urgency she'd never heard before. His footsteps thudded against the pavement, firm and fast, his arms wrapped tightly to keep her from slipping. Ava tried to lift her head, but the dizziness returned, making her groan. "What happened?" "You fainted," Leo said, not slowing down. "I'm taking you to the clinic." She wanted to ask more, but her eyelids grew heavy again, and she let herself drift into the strange comfort of his arms. Leo, the silent husband who barely spoke a full sentence, now carrying her like she was the only thing that mattered. The clinic wasn't what Ava expected. She thought Leo would take her to the public health center in Central Willow Creek, the one with grimy plastic chairs and lines that snaked out the door. But when she opened her eyes, she was lying on a clean exam bed in a bright room with white walls and the faint scent of antiseptic. Through the window, she saw well-manicured lawns and large homes. This was the wealthy side of town, a place she'd never been. A middle-aged nurse named Marla, according to her name tag, was checking her blood pressure. "You're okay now, but you need better nutrition," she said, voice a mix of sternness and concern. "The baby's healthy, but you're mildly anemic and exhausted. We'll start an IV and give you some prenatal vitamins." Ava nodded weakly, her eyes searching for Leo. He stood in the corner, arms crossed, steel-gray gaze as unreadable as ever. But something was different. His shoulders were tense, like he was bracing for something. The door swung open, and a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a warm smile entered. He scanned a chart, then looked at Leo, and his eyes lit up. "Mr. Castell, it's been a while. I thought you'd left town." Ava frowned. Castell. She looked to Leo, expecting him to correct the name, but he only gave a short nod, lips pressed tight. "Just passing through," he said, voice barely audible. The doctor chuckled, oblivious to Leo's unease. "Still modest, I see. If it weren't for you, This clinic wouldn't even exist. He turned to Ava, extending a hand. I'm Dr. Reynolds. A pleasure to meet Leo's wife, right? Ava blinked, her throat dry. Yes. Ava, she replied, clutching the bedsheet. Wife of Leo. The word felt foreign, like a coat that didn't fit. Dr. Reynolds scribbled something on the chart, then glanced at Leo. We'll keep her here a few hours for fluids. I'll prescribe vitamins and schedule checkups. Same payment method? Leo nodded. Up front, all of it. Marla looked up, surprised. All of it? But we haven't even... No deposit, Leo interrupted, his voice calm but firm. He pulled a sleek black card from his shirt pocket, no logo, just a glint of power, and handed it to Marla. She hesitated, then took it and exited the room. Ava stared at him, mind spinning. This man in a threadbare flannel shirt, living in a rundown rental, had just paid for her treatment without blinking. And Castell, that name echoed in her mind like a puzzle piece that didn't belong. You know them? She asked, voice raspy with fatigue. Leo glanced at her, his expression impossible to read. Met them before, he said, then turned away, staring out the window like the conversation was over. Ava bit her lip. She wanted to ask more about the doctor, the name, the card. But Leo's silence was a wall. She lay back, letting the IV drip cool liquid into her veins, trying to piece together what she knew. Leo wasn't homeless. Not entirely. He had money, connections, a past he wasn't sharing. But why was he here, in a fake marriage, with her? By the time they left the clinic, the sky had turned a brilliant orange. Leo walked ahead, hands in his pockets, saying nothing about what had just happened. Ava followed slowly, her sandals scraping the sidewalk. Her body felt better, but her mind was still heavy. Thank you, she said, breaking the silence, for bringing me here and for paying. Leo paused, turning to face her. In the dim light, his face had softened slightly, though it remained unreadable. You need rest, he said, then turned back around. Ava tightened her grip on her bag, the question escaping her lips before she could stop it. Is Castell your real name? He stopped again, shoulders tensing. For a moment she thought he might answer, offer her a real piece of who he was, but he only said, let's go home, and kept walking. That night, lying in the small room with its creaky mattress and peeling walls, Ava listened to the night insects buzz beyond the window. She thought about Leo, the man who'd carried her through dusty streets, paid for her treatment with a mysterious black card, and was called a name that didn't belong to him. Who was he? And why, out of everyone in the world, had he chosen to be here, with her, in this crumbling house and in a marriage built on lies? She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby's quiet rhythm. I'll figure it out, she whispered, I promise. Rain tapped softly on the roof of the Sycamore house, each drop seeping through the cracks and falling into the plastic bucket Ava had placed in the corner of the living room. The rental trembled under the weight of the June wind, as if even the house was tired of life. Ava sat on the worn-out couch, cradling her 7-month belly, trying to read an old medical textbook borrowed from the town library, but the words blurred on the page, her mind drifting to Leo, the mysterious husband who had carried her to the clinic, paid the bill with a sleek black card, and had been called Mr. Castell, as if he belonged to another world entirely. Leo remained a ghost. He left before sunrise, returned after dark, always carrying the scent of sawdust and earth. The small gestures, warm water, food bags, a bottle of medicine, were like flickers of light through the wall of silence he'd built. But after the clinic, Ava couldn't stop thinking about him. Castell. That name echoed in her mind like a riddle missing its final piece. Tonight, the rain kept Leo home. For the first time, he didn't vanish after dinner. He sat at the scratched-up wooden kitchen table, working on a laptop Ava had never seen before. The screen glowed pale blue, the casing scuffed and worn, but the light highlighted the sharp angles of his face and the cold gray of his eyes. Ava stood at the kitchen threshold, clutching a glass of water, hesitating. She wanted to ask about the clinic, the name, but every time she tried to start a conversation, Leo would shut her out with silence. She took a deep breath and stepped inside, pretending to reach for a towel from the shelf. Leo didn't look up. His fingers flew across the keyboard, fast and precise, not like a man who did manual labor. Ava glanced over his shoulder, just intending to steal a quick look, but what she saw made her freeze. The screen displayed a complex financial software, charts, figures, and blinking data columns. An open email window showed a signature at the bottom. L. Castell, Castell Group Holdings. The name of the company sounded powerful, distant, something that belonged to Wall Street, not Willow Creek. Ava blurted out, "What's Castell Group Holdings?" Leo jolted, snapping the laptop shut with a sharp click. He turned, narrowing his eyes like she had just trespassed on a locked door. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, voice low but sharp. I was just getting a towel," Ava said, holding it up as proof, but she couldn't stop. "I saw the screen, the signature. That's you, isn't it? L. Castell?" Leo stayed silent, his hand gripping the edge of the table. In the dim glow of the kitchen light, there was something weary in his face, like a man carrying years of regret. He sighed, a heavy, worn sound, and stood pushing his chair back. "You shouldn't have seen that," he said, but there was no anger, just resignation. "Why not?" Ava stepped closer, her heart pounding. "Who are you, Leo? You're not homeless. You're not some day laborer. You paid a medical bill without blinking. And now, Castell Group? You owe me an explanation." Leo looked at her, eyes dark and unreadable, as if weighing whether to speak or retreat again. Finally, he sat back down, rubbing a hand over his face. "You want to know?" he asked, voice gravelly. "Fine." Ava sat across from him, the glass in her hand turning cold. She waited, barely breathing, afraid he might change his mind. "I used to have everything," Leo began, staring into space. "Money, power, a billion-dollar company, Castell Group Holdings. It was my family's. I ran it, built it up from nothing, but I sacrificed too much along the way." Ava frowned. "Sacrificed what?" Leo hesitated, his fingers drumming the table as if wrestling with memories. "Family," he said. "My younger brother, Ethan. He couldn't handle the pressure, the media, the competition, the dirty games in business. I was too busy with the company to see he was falling apart. Until it was too late." Ava swallowed hard, feeling the grief in his voice. "What happened to him?" Leo looked down, lips pressed tight. "Ethan took his own life. 3 years ago, he left a note saying I chose the company over him." He gave a hollow laugh, bitter and broken. "He wasn't wrong. I let work consume everything." Ava sat in stunned silence, thinking of her father, of the last days in the hospital when all she wanted was more time with him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Leo shrugged, brushing away her sympathy like it was something he didn't deserve. "After that, I walked away. From everything. The company, the penthouse, all of it. I didn't want to be found. I came here, lived like this, because it was the only way I could breathe." Ava shook her head, trying to fit the pieces together. "Then why marry me? Why sign that contract? If you were hiding, why step into something like this?" Leo looked at her, and for the first time his eyes weren't cold. They were conflicted. "I'm not hiding," he said. "I'm making amends, not for money, for something else." She wanted to ask more, but Leo stood, grabbing the laptop. "That's enough," he said, voice returning to its usual guarded tone. "Don't tell anyone, especially Lorraine." He left the kitchen and Ava sat there, questions still tumbling in her mind. The table still held traces of him, the faint scent of coffee from his mug, the echo of the door closing down the hall. Castell Group Holdings, his brother. Suicide. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it was still blurred at the edges. That night, as rain tapped against the window, Ava lay awake, thinking of Leo. The man who once had the world, now living in a crumbling house with a woman he barely knew, carrying a grief he refused to share. He wasn't the husband she would have chosen, but for the first time she felt a thread between them. Thin, but real. They had both lost someone, both lived in the shadow of mistakes. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the baby's heartbeat. I won't give up, she whispered. And maybe neither will he. Afternoon in Willow Creek smelled of freshly cut grass and melting asphalt. Ava sat on the creaking front steps of the rental house, her hand resting on her 7.5-month belly, eyes following the neighborhood kids biking down Sycamore Street. Behind her, the house groaned with the wind, as if sighing alongside her. Ever since Leo opened up about his brother and Castell Group holdings, Ava hadn't been able to stop thinking about him. The man who once owned an empire, now hiding in a broken-down house, carrying grief he shared only once. Leo still kept his distance. Every morning he left the house and returned with dust-caked boots and that distant look in his eyes. But there were small moments, the water bottle he left on the kitchen counter, the old blanket he quietly draped over her when she fell asleep on the couch. That made Ava feel he wasn't entirely out of reach. She wanted to ask more about his past, about why he agreed to their sham marriage. But every time she tried, he rebuilt the wall of silence. Today, Leo was home, rare. He was fixing the leaky kitchen faucet, the clinking of the wrench echoing through the peeling walls. Ava was just about to bring him a glass of water when she heard tires screeching outside. A sleek black SUV, far too polished for Willow Creek, pulled up in front of the house. The door opened and a man stepped out, mid-50s, silver hair slicked back, dressed in a perfectly tailored gray suit. He eyed the house with thinly veiled distaste, then knocked firmly on the door. Ava opened it, gripping the water glass tightly. "Hi, can I help you?" The man smiled, but his eyes were sharp as blades. "I'm looking for Leo. Leo Castell. He lives here, doesn't he?" Ava blinked, heart kicking in her chest. Castell. The name again, like a secret that refused to stay hidden. Before she could respond, Leo appeared behind her, drying his hands with a rag. "Richard," he said, voice low and cool. "What are you doing here?" Richard chuckled and stepped inside without waiting for permission. "Still the same, Leo. Always making people guess." His eyes slid to Ava's belly. "And this is—" "My wife," Leo said flatly. "Ava." Ava gave a small nod, feeling like a stranger in her own home. Richard raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "We need to talk," he said to Leo. "Privately." Leo glanced at her, a quiet signal. She hesitated, then stepped back toward the kitchen, but not far. She stood just behind the thin wall, ear pressed to the wooden paneling, listening as rain began to patter outside. "Leo, you can't keep running," Richard said, his voice low but firm. "Castell Group is on the edge. A group of shareholders is pushing for a merger with Triton Capital. If it goes through, your family's company will be gutted. Everything your father built, gone." A chair creaked. Leo must have sat down. "It's not my problem anymore," he said. "I left." "Left?" Richard scoffed. "You think walking away solves anything? You're still the largest shareholder. Only you can call an emergency board meeting and stop this. Come back, Leo. Just once." Silence. Ava imagined Leo's jaw clenched, eyes hard like stone. "No," he said finally. "I'm done with that world." Richard sighed. "Because of Ethan? Leo, what happened wasn't your fault. You can't keep punishing yourself." Ava held her breath. Ethan, Leo's brother, the one who had taken his own life. "Don't say his name," Leo snapped, his voice cutting like glass. "You know what happened. The media, the lies. Triton's setup. They hunted Ethan like prey, and I did nothing. I didn't protect him. I won't go back. Not ever." Ava gripped her glass tighter, heart aching. She pictured Ethan, a brilliant young man trapped in headlines, camera flashes, false accusations, and Leo, the older brother, watching it all unravel. Richard spoke softer now, persuasive. "I understand, but if you do nothing, Triton wins. They destroy everything. Is that how you want Ethan to be remembered? As collateral?" A chair scraped. Footsteps followed. "Leave," Leo said, dangerously calm. "Don't come back." The front door opened and slammed shut. Ava heard the SUV engine start, tires screeching away on the wet road. She stepped into the living room and saw Leo standing by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the rain. "Are you okay?" she asked, hesitant. Leo didn't turn around. "You heard it all," he said. It wasn't a question. Ava flushed but didn't deny it. I didn't mean to, but I want to understand. Ethan, what happened to him? Leo turned slowly. His eyes were filled with something raw. Pain, unhealed. He sank onto the couch, rubbing his face. Ethan was a genius, he said, voice hoarse. He designed software for Castell Group, but he was too sensitive for that world. 3 years ago, Triton Capital, our biggest rival, leaked false rumors that Ethan embezzled funds. Lies. But the media didn't care. They hounded him. Cameras, headlines, accusations. He couldn't take it. He ended it. Ava lowered herself onto the other couch cushion, hand resting protectively over her belly. And you blame yourself. Leo gave a bitter laugh. I was his brother. I was supposed to protect him, but I was too busy signing deals, building empires. By the time I noticed, it was too late. He looked at her, eyes dull. That world, money, power, media, it devours everything. I want no part of it anymore. Ava nodded, thinking of her father, of the moments she wished she'd stayed with him longer at the hospital. But if you could stop Triton, save the company, wouldn't that be a way to make it right? For Ethan? Leo shook his head. There's no making it right, only surviving what's left. He stood, walked toward the hallway, then paused at the doorway. You don't understand, Ava. Don't try. The door closed behind him, leaving Ava alone with the rain and a hollow ache in her chest. She thought of Leo, running from a past that chased him anyway. She thought of Ethan, of twisted headlines and a broken family. And she thought of herself, caught in this marriage by chance, yet for the first time, feeling like she and Leo might not be so different. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the flutter of life inside. I'm going to try to understand him, she whispered, and maybe help him find his way back. Are you still following the story? Please leave your thoughts on the story in the comments below. All your comments are the motivation for us to create better stories. Don't forget to subscribe to Soul Stories. Thank you very much. Summer in Willow Creek was stifling, the air thick with the scent of dry grass and melting asphalt. Ava sat on the kitchen stool, gently rubbing her 8-month belly, her eyes tracing the crack in the wall as if it held the answer to her life. The rented house on Sycamore Street was still as worn down as the day she moved in, but now it bore traces of life. A jar of wildflowers she'd picked near the church, the kitchen table Leo had scrubbed clean, and a faded rug she'd found at a flea market. Small things, but they made this place feel like home, at least for now. Leo remained a puzzle. Ever since the conversation with Richard, his former associate from Castell Group, he'd grown even more guarded, as if opening up had shaken something loose he wasn't ready to face. But Ava no longer feared his silence. She saw him through actions. The way he fixed the leaky pipes, the milk he quietly left on the table when he knew she had a craving, the way he glanced at her every evening, as if silently checking she was okay. They weren't a couple, not really, but they were learning how to coexist. A sharp knock on the door cut through her thoughts. Ava frowned, rising slowly, her belly making her steps awkward. Leo was at the worksite, so she opened the door, half expecting a debt collector or a nosy neighbor. But it was Lorraine. She stood tall on the front step, wearing a blinding red dress and high heels that didn't belong on dusty roads. Her eyes gleamed like a fox catching the scent of prey. Ava, she said, her smile syrupy sweet but cold as ice. Long time no see. Aren't you going to invite your dear mother in? Ava tightened her grip on the doorknob, her stomach turning. Lorraine hadn't come by once since dumping her and Leo into this house. What do you want? She asked, her voice firmer than she expected. Lorraine stepped inside uninvited, wrinkling her nose at the worn-down living room. Honestly, Ava, is this how you're living? With a billionaire, no less? Oh, don't act surprised. I heard. Leonardo Castell, isn't it? Chief Executive Officer of Castell Group Holdings. Who would have guessed your homeless husband was a golden goose? Ava blinked, her mind reeling. How do you know that? Lorraine scoffed, sitting on the couch like she owned the place. Willow Creek is small. Gossip travels fast. Some nurse at the clinic was bragging about generous Mr. Castell. I did some digging. Anonymous billionaire. walked away from his empire to live like a drifter. And you, pregnant, married to him through a contract. A great story, but it's over now. Ava stood straighter, hand on her belly. Over? What are you talking about? Lorraine tilted her head, eyes gleaming. A divorce, Ava. You're going to divorce Leo. I found someone better for you. Jacob Palmer, a rising political star. He needs a wife for his campaign image. And you, well, you'll do if we ignore the baby bump. Fear surged in Ava's chest, but it was quickly drowned out by rage. You're insane, she said. I'm not divorcing Leo, and I'm not some product for you to trade. Lorraine stood, smile vanishing. Don't be naive. Leo doesn't love you. He signed the contract for his own reasons. Maybe to dodge taxes, who knows? Jacob can pay off your debts and give you a real future? Or would you rather the whole town know you're a knocked-up girl who got dumped by Caleb? The local paper would love that story. Ava felt the blood rush to her face, like a slap. She remembered the nights Lorraine called her a burden, the tears she cried when Caleb left, the loneliness after her father's death. She used to be afraid of Lorraine. She used to let her control everything. But now something had changed. Maybe it was the baby growing inside her. Maybe it was the way Leo looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. No, Ava said, voice trembling but steady. You want to go public? Be my guest. I'm not ashamed of my baby. Yes, I got pregnant and Caleb left me. But I don't need Jacob. I don't need you. And I sure as hell don't need this town's approval. Lorraine's eyes widened, clearly not expecting a fight. You dare? I'm not done, Ava cut in, stepping forward until they were eye to eye. You tricked me into a marriage contract. You buried me in debt. And now you want to control me again? It ends here, Lorraine. I'm not your puppet. Get out of my house. Lorraine laughed dryly, but her eyes flickered. Your house? This shack? You'll regret this, Ava. Without me, you're nothing. I'm a mother, Ava said, placing a hand over her belly. And that's enough. Leave, or I'll call the police. Lorraine clenched her purse, her face burning red. You'll pay for this, she hissed, then turned on her heel, heels clicking sharply on the steps. The door slammed, leaving Ava shaking, but standing. She sank onto the couch, breath ragged. Tears threatened, but she pressed her lips together, refusing to let them fall. She thought of her father, who always told her she was stronger than she believed. She thought of Leo, whose quiet presence still made her feel safe. And she thought of her baby, who deserved a mother who didn't bow. When Leo returned that evening, rain had begun to fall, dampening his flannel shirt. He paused in the doorway, eyes scanning the room, sensing the shift in the air. What happened? He asked, his voice low and alert. Ava looked up from the couch, still holding a lukewarm cup of tea. Lorraine came by. She knows who you are, Leonardo Castell. She wanted me to divorce you and marry some politician. I said no. Leo's brow furrowed as he stepped inside, dropping his bag. Did she threaten you? She said she'd expose me. Tell everyone I got pregnant before marriage. Ava's voice was calmer than she expected. But I'm not scared. I told her I wasn't ashamed and that I cut ties with her. Leo stared at her, something shifting behind his storm-colored eyes, like he was seeing her for the first time. You're sure? He asked. Lorraine doesn't let go easily. I know, Ava said, standing, one hand protectively over her belly. But I'm tired of running. My child needs me strong. And I will be, with or without you. Leo said nothing for a moment, then the corners of his mouth twitched. Just barely, a rare, nearly invisible smile. Good, he said, then turned away. But not before she caught the flicker of respect in his eyes. That night, as the rain tapped against the window, Ava lay awake in bed. She was no longer the frightened girl who had signed a marriage contract in desperation. She was Ava Harper, a mother, a woman learning to stand tall. And while Leo remained a mystery, she knew now she wasn't alone. The storm hit Willow Creek like an uninvited guest, bringing with it sheets of rain and jagged lightning that sliced the sky. The old rental house on Sycamore groaned in the wind, roof tiles clattering, rainwater slipping through cracks to drip onto the floor. Ava lay in bed, one hand resting on her 8.5-month belly, trying to breathe through the nagging back pain that had become her nightly companion in recent weeks. But tonight the pain was different, sharp, rhythmic, urgent, like the baby was pounding on her spine. She bit her lip and inhaled deeply, hoping it was just another Braxton Hicks contraction, the false alarms her doctor had warned her about. But then came another surge, stronger, and a gush of warm fluid between her legs. Her heart raced. Her water had broken. Labor had started, and it was early. And outside, the streets were empty beneath a torrential downpour. "Leo!" she cried, voice trembling, gripping the bed frame. Thunder swallowed her words, but she heard hurried footsteps from the other room. The door flew open, and Leo appeared. Hair tousled, flannel shirt wrinkled, clearly just woken. "What is it?" he asked, eyes scanning her until he saw the panic in her face. "The baby, I think she's coming," Ava gasped. "My water broke." Leo didn't hesitate. He knelt beside her, hands steady on her shoulder, voice low but firm. "Breathe, I'm taking you to the hospital." He stood, grabbed the truck keys from the hook, and came back to help her up. Ava clung to him, each step a battle as contractions built. Outside, the rain poured like a waterfall. Wind whipped branches against the windows. Leo practically carried her to the old pickup truck parked out front, not caring that his clothes were soaked through. He opened the passenger door, eased her in, then ran around to the driver's side. The engine roared to life, tires screeching on the flooded street as they plunged into the storm. "Hold on," Leo said, his eyes locked on the barely visible road. Lightning flashed, illuminating his tense jaw and fierce concentration. Ava gripped the door handle, trying to breathe through the pain. Despite everything, the storm, the contractions, his presence grounded her. The drive to Willow Creek General was nerve-wracking. The wipers squealed across the windshield, struggling to clear the deluge. Several times the truck skidded on the slick pavement. Ava groaned, clutching her belly, fear rising like a tide. "What if we don't make it?" she whispered. "You will," Leo cut in, calm and absolute. He glanced at her, just for a second, but she saw the conviction in his eyes. "I won't let anything happen to you." The hospital glowed like a beacon in the storm, neon lights reflecting in puddles on the pavement. Leo screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance and jumped out, flagging down the nearest nurse. 2 staff members rushed over with a wheelchair, helping Ava out of the truck while Leo stayed close, drenched but unmoving. They whisked her to the delivery room, rubber soles squeaking on the linoleum, the sterile scent of antiseptic hitting her nose. The pain came in crashing waves now, stealing her breath. She gripped the nurse's hand, focusing on the voice of the OB-GYN, a calm, middle-aged woman with steady hands and a soothing tone. "You're doing great, Ava. Breathe, we're almost there." Ava scanned the room for Leo, but he wasn't allowed in. His absence left a hollow ache. He, who had once been a stranger, was now the one she wished by her side. But she closed her eyes and thought of the baby, of her father, of herself. "You've got this," she told herself, echoing the words her dad once said. Hours blurred, pain, breath, sweat, pressure, and then, piercing through it all, the sharp, mighty cry of a newborn. Ava wept, not from pain but from relief, from overwhelming love, as a nurse placed the tiny bundle against her chest. The baby was warm and soft, with dark wisps of hair and a wrinkled forehead. "Congratulations," the doctor said, smiling. "You have a healthy baby girl." Ava stroked the baby's fine hair, whispering, "You're here. I'm here." By the time Ava was moved to recovery, the storm had softened to a drizzle. She lay in the hospital bed, the baby swaddled in a pink blanket against her chest, asleep. The door creaked open, and Leo stepped in. His hair was still damp, his clothes slightly drier thanks to a hospital-issued jacket. He paused at the threshold, his eyes moving from Ava to the infant in her arms. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice hoarse. Ava nodded, offering a weak smile. "We're okay. This is her." She hesitated, then added, "I want to name her Hope. What do you think?" Leo moved closer, gazing at the newborn. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something soft, almost sorrowful. Maybe he was thinking of Ethan. "Hope," he repeated, voice quiet. "It's good." He sat in the chair beside her bed. He didn't speak, but he didn't have to. His presence filled the space, steady and calm. Ava looked down at Hope, then up at Leo, and for the first time she felt like they weren't just broken pieces trying to coexist. Their marriage had started with lies, with desperation and contracts. But now here was something real, a child, a connection. "Thank you," Ava said softly, "for getting me here, for staying." Leo looked at her, and for the briefest second, the corner of his mouth curved in one of those rare smiles. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, and in that moment, she believed him. That night, under the dim glow of the hospital room, Ava held Hope close, listening to the soft patter of rain outside. She thought about the past months, the fear, the manipulation, the silence. But now she had Hope, and she had Leo, a man who made no promises but always showed up when it mattered. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time she felt ready to face it. Autumn wrapped Willow Creek in shades of amber and gold. Dry leaves spun down Sycamore Street, skipping over the porch steps of the old rental house. Inside, the space no longer felt cold. A new rug covered the worn wooden floor. The fireplace Leo had fixed radiated warmth, and 3-month-old Hope's giggles echoed from her wooden cradle in the living room. Ava sat on the sofa, cradling her daughter, softly humming a lullaby her father used to sing. Hope's wide brown eyes stared up at her, as if her entire world existed in her mother's arms. 3 months had passed since Hope was born, and Ava felt transformed. She was no longer the frightened girl Lorraine could manipulate, or the shadow of a woman weighed down by loss. Motherhood had taught her how to stand tall, how to love without waiting for perfection. What she hadn't expected was Leo, her husband on paper, once a mystery, now becoming an irreplaceable part of her life. Leo still wasn't a man of many words, but something in him had changed. He no longer left at the crack of dawn. Instead, he stayed to brew morning coffee, fix Hope's crib, or simply sit beside Ava in silence, his steel gray eyes softer now. The confrontation with Lorraine, the birth of Hope, it had chipped away at the walls he'd built. Still, Ava knew parts of him were haunted, by Ethan, by Castell Group, by a world he'd abandoned. One afternoon, while Ava was changing Hope's diaper, Leo appeared in the doorway, a brown envelope in hand. He stood there for a moment, hesitant, as if wrestling with something. "We need to talk," he said, voice low and serious. Ava placed Hope in her cradle, wiped her hands on her apron, and sat at the kitchen table. "What's wrong?" she asked, sensing the tension behind his gaze. Leo opened the envelope, pulling out a stack of papers. "Richard called yesterday," he said, referencing his old friend from Castell Group. "The merger with Triton Capital went through. The company's being dismantled, unless someone steps in. They want me back, just once, to convene the board and reverse it." Ava frowned, recalling Leo's tense conversation with Richard last month. "I thought you didn't want anything to do with that world anymore." "I didn't," Leo admitted, gripping the table's edge. "But if I don't act, Triton wins. They're the ones who destroyed Ethan. I can't let them erase the last thing my family built." Ava looked at him and saw the pain and resolve battling in his eyes. "So, you're going back?" Leo held her gaze. "Only if you come with me," he said. "I can't do it without you, Ava." She blinked, stunned. "Me? Leo, I don't know anything about corporations or finance. I'm just a mom, a girl from Willow Creek." Leo smiled, genuine, rare. "You're the woman who stood up to Lorraine, who gave birth to Hope, who turned this house into a home. You're stronger than you think. I need you, not as a prop, but as my partner." Ava fell silent, heart racing. Partner. The word rang like a promise, a door opening to a future she never dared imagine. She thought about her journey, from manipulated girl to confident mother, from a fake marriage to something quietly real. She didn't need Leo to rescue her. She wanted him because she loved him. Love that had grown slowly, through shared silences and small acts of care. "Okay," she said at last, her voice steady. "I'll go, but I want to do something. For women like me." Leo raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Ava took a deep breath. "A foundation for single mothers, women trapped like I once was." I want to give them support, a way out, a future. If we're returning to your world, I want to leave my mark too. Leo looked at her, pride gleaming in his eyes. Deal, he said, offering his hand. Ava took it, feeling the warmth of his palm, and in that moment, she knew. They were no longer just husband and wife on paper. Weeks later, Ava and Leo stood in a bright office high above Cleveland, 3 hours from Willow Creek. Castell Group Holdings occupied the 30th floor of a glass tower overlooking the glimmering surface of Lake Erie. Ava, in a simple blue maternity dress, held Hope snug against her chest in a sling. She felt small amid the suits and the clatter of keyboards, but Leo, dressed now in a crisp white shirt and slacks, still held her hand and anchored her with his presence. The board meeting was intense. Leo, sharp and composed, dismantled the Triton merger with facts, documents, and a confidence that didn't need volume. Ava sat quietly in a corner, watching him command the room. When the meeting ended, the board unanimously voted to cancel the merger. Castell Group had been saved. Afterward, in Leo's private office, he turned to her. "How are you holding up?" he asked, gently brushing Hope's dark hair. "I'm proud," Ava said, smiling, "and ready. I've been researching nonprofit structures. I want to call it the Hope Foundation, for her and for Hope." Leo nodded, pulling a folder from his drawer. "I had the lawyers draft this. The foundation will be funded through Castell Group, but you'll run it. It's yours, Ava." Ava looked at the paperwork, tears welling in her eyes. She was no longer the girl who signed Lorraine's contract without reading. She was Ava Harper, mother of Hope, a woman who chose to love Leo, not for his money or power, but because he had stood beside her through the storm. That night, in their hotel room overlooking the city lights, Ava cuddled Hope as Leo wrapped an arm around them both. He whispered, "I don't know how to love, Ava, but with you and Hope, I'm learning." She smiled, placing her hand over his heart. "Love can be learned," she said, "and we've got a lifetime to practice." Bottom of form. The following autumn, Willow Creek glowed in a riot of crimson maples and golden light. The wind carried the scent of dry grass and warm sugar cookies from the town bakery. The small square in front of First Presbyterian Church, once home to forgettable local festivals, was now beautifully decorated for a momentous occasion: the wedding of Ava Harper and Leonardo Castell. No more courthouse contracts, no trembling signatures made under pressure. This time, they were marrying for love. Inside the church's bridal room, Ava stood before the mirror. Her ivory wedding gown, simple yet elegant, hugged her figure, now slimmer since giving birth to Hope. Her brown hair was loosely braided, adorned with tiny wildflowers like the ones she used to pick along Sycamore Street. She smiled. She was no longer the frightened girl from a year ago, but a mother, a woman who loved Leo with her whole heart. Hope, now over a year old, toddled around in a pale pink flower girl dress, hugging Ava's leg. "Mama," she chirped, holding up a white daisy. Ava bent down and kissed her daughter's cheek, her heart swelling. Hope was her light, her reason for standing up to Lorraine, her bridge to Leo. The door creaked open and Marla, the nurse from the clinic, stepped in, eyes twinkling. "You look radiant, Ava," she said, adjusting Ava's veil. "The whole town is outside. Nobody ever imagined the homeless guy would throw a wedding like this." Ava laughed. "Didn't they call him the masked lunatic once?" Marla nodded, grinning. "Now they call him a legend. Ready?" Ava took a deep breath, hugged Hope once more. "Ready?" The square was packed, hundreds of Willow Creek residents, staff from Castell Group, and mothers from the Hope Foundation, the nonprofit Ava had started to support single moms. Wooden benches, wrapped in ivy and daisies, flanked the aisle. A long table offered spiced cider and autumn pastries. In the center, a floral arch waited. Beneath it stood Leo. He wore a deep gray suit, hair neatly styled, yet still held the quiet simplicity of the man who once wore flannel in a rundown house. His steel gray eyes lit up as Ava stepped out, holding Hope's hand, accompanied by the gentle strings of cannon in D. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause. Ava's cheeks flushed, but her gaze never left Leo, the man who was once a mystery and now meant everything to her. As she reached the arch, Leo scooped up Hope, who giggled and tugged at his tie, earning laughter from the crowd. He handed her to Marla, then took Ava's hand, eyes fixed only on her. "You look beautiful," he murmured, voice warm and low. "You're not so bad yourself," she whispered back, smiling. The pastor, a kindly older man, began the ceremony. He spoke of love, of new beginnings, of how God brings together the most unlikely pieces. Ava listened, her mind drifting to the courthouse a year ago. The cold room, the shaky signatures, Leo's silent gaze. Now his hand was steady in hers, his presence a constant through every small moment. Warm water, peanut butter sandwiches, the storm that brought hope into the world. When it came time for the vows, Leo surprised everyone by kneeling. From his pocket, he pulled out a simple silver ring with a small pearl. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and Ava covered her mouth, tears welling up. "Ava Harper," Leo began, voice strong yet tender, meant only for her. "I used to think I had nothing left to give. I ran from my past, from myself. But you and Hope, you gave me a reason to stay, to learn how to love. I can't promise you the world, but I promise to spend my life making you happy. Marry me, this time, for love." Ava nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. She took a breath, then answered, voice shaky but clear. "Leonardo Castell, our marriage started with lies, with fear and debt. But today I choose you, not because I need you, but because I love you. I want to build a life with you, with hope, with every messy, beautiful moment." The crowd erupted into applause. Some wiped their eyes. Leo slid the ring onto her finger, and she did the same for him. A matching silver band, engraved inside with the word hope. The pastor smiled. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Leo pulled her into his arms and kissed her, soft and deep, as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them. Hope clapped from Marla's arms, and daisies filled the air as the crowd cheered. The reception was filled with laughter and music. Willow Creek residents danced to country songs played by a local band. Children darted around, cookie crumbs on their faces. Ava and Leo cut their wedding cake, a simple vanilla sponge with white frosting and wildflowers. Hope sat on Leo's lap, trying to shove cake into his mouth, making them both laugh. Richard, Leo's old friend, raised a glass of cider as he approached. "You've surprised me, Leo," he said with a grin. "Leaving Wall Street to marry a small-town girl and become a father. But seeing you now, I think Ethan would be proud." Leo nodded, eyes shimmering. "Thanks, Richard." He glanced at Ava, who was laughing with the women from the Hope Foundation. "She makes me better." As night fell, Ava and Leo stood beneath the flower arch, Hope asleep in their arms. Moonlight spilled across the square, casting a soft glow on scattered daisies. Ava leaned into Leo, fingers tracing the edge of her silver ring. "Leo," she whispered, "why did you say yes that day at the courthouse? You never really told me." Leo was quiet, his gaze distant, like he was back in that cold city room. "I saw you," he said finally, "through a friend at the clerk's office, someone who knew about Lorraine's contract. You were pregnant, grieving your father, trapped. You reminded me of Ethan, when I failed to save him. I thought, if I helped you, even just on paper, maybe I could make up for a piece of that. But you gave me more than I ever expected. You gave me hope, and you." Ava smiled, a tear sliding down her cheek. "Then I guess we both paid our debts, in our own way." Leo kissed her forehead, whispering, "No more debts, just love." And they looked down at their daughter, then at each other, knowing that while their past was marked by pain, debt, loss, lies, their future was rooted in truth and in the love they had slowly, bravely learned. And beneath the starlit sky of Willow Creek, they stepped into their new life, hand in hand, with hope lighting the way.